Rumor has it, Holly, that you had annoyed visitation at the Slash Club last night.
It was just a mind slip. Nothing special.
There's a movie so bizarre, so chaotic, and so controversial that when it hit theaters in 1992, audiences didn't know whether to be fascinated or horrified. A movie that was sold like it was a sexy cartoon romp for adults, but behind the scenes, it was pure madness. This is the movie that nearly broke its director, featured a version of Hollywood you were never supposed to see, and is somehow even darker than you remember. We're talking about Cool World, and trust me, you will never look at this movie the same way after this. Because what if I told you Cool World wasn't even supposed to be a movie you saw? What if the original version was meant to be an R-rated, horror-fueled, erotic revenge tale about a cartoon woman literally seducing a human man to have a child that could destroy both dimensions? And that everything you did see in theaters was the result of studio sabotage, violent on-set fights, and last-minute rewrites so chaotic the lead actor didn't even know what movie he was in. Let's step into the twisted, wild pages of Cool World and uncover the secrets you were never supposed to know. Cool World might look like a hybrid of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Sin City, and a bad acid trip, but it was never supposed to be that way. Director Rolf Bakshi, already a notorious figure in underground animation thanks to Fritz the Cat and Wizards, originally pitched Cool World as something way darker, weirder, and way more adult. In his original script, the film was intended to be a full-on animated horror experience with a bleak psychological core. The story centered on a doodle, a cartoon woman who is desperate to escape the confines of her 2D world. But not just escape.
I'm made of ink, but I'm no dream.
What'd you do that for?
Because I dig you.
She plans to invade the real world by seducing a human man, becoming pregnant, and using the hybrid child as a weapon to tear down the boundaries between dimensions. That child wasn't meant to be cute or whimsical. It was a monster, a grotesque, disturbing creature created out of lust and desperation. The script leaned into body horror, trauma, and a warped interpretation of motherhood. There were scenes that dealt with psychological manipulation, twisted desire, and a surreal breakdown of identity. And get this, Bakshi included references to ancient myths like Lilith, the first woman in some religious texts who was banished for not submitting to Adam. That's the level of depth and horror he was aiming for. Cool World was supposed to be a cautionary tale about unchecked desire, the blurred line between creation and destruction, and the consequences of treating fantasy like reality. But the studio, they freaked out. Paramount Pictures, once they saw how far out Bakshi's vision really was, slammed the brakes. They wanted something edgier than Disney, but still accessible. So they chopped out the sex, the horror, the allegory, and what was left was a Frankenstein script that tried to be comedy, a noir thriller, and a fantasy all at once. Here's the part that'll blow your mind. Bakshi didn't even know his script had been completely rewritten until he got to the set. Imagine showing up to direct your own movie and realizing someone else has rewritten your dreams into a cartoonish nightmare. But if you think that's insane, just wait until you hear what's going on with the actors behind the scenes, because even they didn't know what movie they were making. Picture this, it's the early 90s. Brad Pitt's still on the rise. He's got the looks, the charm, and that leading man energy Hollywood loves. Then he signs on to Cool World, thinking it's gonna be edgy, a little dangerous, a bold, adult-themed movie with visionary animation. That's not what he got. As the script kept changing, Pitt found himself trapped in a role that didn't make sense.
What can I say, sweetheart? I can't help you out in that department.
Well, don't you see? Believe it.
I've had enough.
His character, Frank Harris, once a grounded, tragic figure in Bakshi's original vision, a man haunted by loss, seduced by temptation, and slowly unraveling, but in the final film, he's reduced to a confused cartoon cop who bounces between plot points like a human pinball. And Pitt, he was pissed. The tension got so bad, some crew members claimed Pitt was visibly frustrated on set, asking why certain scenes didn't connect or why his character's motivation kept changing. It wasn't just him either. Now, let's talk about Kim Basinger. Her character, Hollywood, was originally meant to be a dark femme fatale, but Basinger had other ideas. According to Bakshi, Basinger approached the studio and requested they tone it all down. Why? Because she wanted to make a version of the movie she could show in children's hospitals. Let that sink in. So, a movie that began as an erotic horror about a killer cartoon sexbot was now being reshaped into something that could play next to Free Willy in a pediatric ward? Bakshi was horrified. He reportedly got into screaming matches over the rewrites, and the kicker? Basinger, like Pitt, allegedly never even read the original script. She signed on based on the studio's version, a version that didn't exist until they hijacked Bakshi's vision. Here's something you probably didn't expect. Brad Pitt and Kim Basinger weren't Ralph Bakshi's first choices for the lead roles. His original pick to play the sultry cartoon femme fatale? Drew Barrymore. That's right. Fresh off her edgy, rebellious teen image in the late 80s, Barrymore was considered the perfect mix of innocence and danger that Bakshi wanted. At the time, Barrymore was already experimenting with provocative roles and had the kind of raw, unpredictable energy that matched Bakshi's vision of Holly, a dangerous fantasy who was less Marilyn Monroe and more manic pixie chaos demon. Of course, once the studio stepped in and sanitized the movie into a PG-13 mess, Barrymore was out, and the role went to the more conventionally glamorous Kim Basinger, who had just come off Batman and was considered a safer box office draw.
I've got news for you, pal. I am not your ordinary doodle. I've been checking up on what these new dames have got going in the real world.
Still, imagine what Cool World could have been with Barrymore at the center. Gritty, weird, wild, maybe even cooler. At this point, the entire production was starting to feel like a bizarre fever dream. But it gets worse, because the real war, that was happening behind the camera. The making of Cool World wasn't just a movie. It was a battleground. Ralph Bakshi was at war with Paramount. He believed in the original vision, and he wasn't going down without a fight. The moment he learned that an uncredited writer had gutted his script and reshaped it into a PG-13 disaster, Bakshi lost it. Reports of on-set fights weren't just rumors. According to some sources, things got physical. One story even claims Bakshi punched producer Frank Mancuso Jr. in the face during a heated argument. And Bakshi, he never denied it. He just said, people got what they deserved. The crew was caught in the crossfire. Animators described the production as one of the most chaotic they'd ever seen. Storyboards were being redrawn weekly. New characters were being added on the fly, and the scenes were being animated before the voice actors had even recorded their lines. This led to a ton of strange pacing issues, awkward lip syncing, and scenes that felt off, like watching a dream slowly turn into a nightmare.
I want you to tear and rip their miserable faces inside out until their mother doesn't recognize them. Pretty please.
One animator even claimed the film was being edited by people who hadn't read the script, because nobody knew which version was being followed anymore. It was like trying to build a house while the blueprint kept changing, and the walls were already on fire. And if you're wondering how anything that chaotic made it into the theaters, the answer is barely. But here's the craziest part. Some animators, fed up with the chaos, decided to get revenge in the most unexpected way, by sneaking secret images into the movie. Let's talk about that. You ever heard of the subliminal frame? It's when animators slip a single image into a film that your brain barely registers, but your subconscious does. They explain it perfectly in Fight Club, and Cool World is packed with them. Rumors have swirled for years that animators angry about the way the film was being ruined hid secret drawings in the background. Some were sexual, some were violent, and some were just downright bizarre. Watch certain scenes frame by frame and you'll find quick flashes of nudity, cartoon characters in compromising positions, grotesque faces that flash and disappear, and even hidden messages written in graffiti on the walls of animated sets. Some of it was subtle, some of it was not. It got so bad that Paramount had to digitally scrub certain frames before the home video release. And a few international versions of the film still contain the original unedited animation.
You better have an appointment.
Go on, Jack.
He does, but you don't.
And while these Easter eggs are shocking on their own, they speak to something deeper, a quiet rebellion. The animators were sabotaging the film from the inside, embedding their frustration into the frames. Ask yourself, How angry do you have to be to vandalize your own art? Believe it or not, Paramount actually went all in on marketing Cool World, at least before they realized what a mess it was becoming behind the scenes. In one of the most infamous stunts in Hollywood history, the studio actually altered the Hollywood sign to promote the film. In July 1992, the iconic Hollywood letters were changed to read Hollywood, complete with a massive 75-foot-tall image of Holly Wood herself, legs crossed, smirking down on Los Angeles like a toon goddess. This wasn't just a cardboard cutout, it was a full-on installation, and people freaked out. Some loved it, some hated it, and others just stood there wondering, who the hell is Hollywood? City officials were not amused. There was public backlash, safety complaints, and even accusations that the Holly image was too risque for a public display visible across the city. The image was taken down shortly after, but not before a wave of media attention and controversy lit up the press. But if that sounds crazy, wait until you hear what happened to Bakshi after Cool World was released. When Cool World finally hit theaters, it bombed hard. Critics hated it, audiences were confused, and Bakshi, he was done. After Cool World, Ralph Bakshi stepped away from feature films. A man who had revolutionized adult animation in the 70s and early 80s, who fought to tell gritty, subversive stories in a medium dominated by cartoons for kids, simply walked away in defeat. He later said that Cool World was the most painful experience of his career. That it was the moment he realized Hollywood no longer had room for true creative risk. The tragedy? Buried underneath the chaos was something.
He's with me too. Can't let the neighbors push us around, can we?
The world of Cool World was a surreal, dystopian Las Vegas populated by hedonistic doodles and corrupted humans. Was original. It could have been revolutionary. But the studio didn't trust the audience. They didn't believe a weird, sexy, violent animated horror film could find an audience. So they sanitized it. And in doing so, they killed it. But what if the real story of Cool World wasn't just about creative sabotage? What if something even darker was going on behind the scenes? The confusing, chaotic final version of Cool World left so many plot holes and contradictions that fans started filling in the blanks themselves. And what they came up with is wild. One popular theory suggests that Cool World is actually a metaphor for drug addiction and dissociation. According to this theory, the doodle realm isn't a real place, it's a hallucination, a shared mental space created by characters who are either dead, dreaming, or in some kind of purgatory. Frank, Brad Pitt's character, didn't cross over. He died in the opening motorcycle crash and is stuck in a dream-like afterlife. Holly isn't a cartoon vixen. She's a symbol for temptation, destruction, and addiction. Other fans think the movie is a dark satire of Hollywood itself. Hollywood is seen as the ultimate symbol of how fame corrupts and consumes women, literally turning them from fantasy into monsters. Her desire to become real mirrors the way actresses are often chewed up by the industry, reshaped into someone else's image, and discarded the moment they break free of their role. There's also a much darker theory. Some fans argue that the real plot of Cool World was suppressed, not because it was too adult, but because it was too close to the truth. According to this theory, the original Bakshi version featured a cartoon world created by a godlike artist, where the characters become conscious and try to break out into our world, turning on their creator. It's a metaphor for rebellion against corporate control. If it were released as intended, the film would have shown a creative uprising against the movie industry itself. That's not just edgy, that's dangerous, especially in an industry where studios hate being portrayed as villains.
Oops, Snake Eyes, you lose.
If Bakshi's movie was truly a manifesto about creative control, exploitation, and artistic rebellion, it makes sense that a major studio would do everything they could to bury it. It's not just a lost movie, it might be a suppressed one. Alright, this next one feels like a Mandela effect, but it's real. DC Comics actually published a 4-issue Cold World comic book miniseries. Released in 1992 by DC's sci-fi imprint Piranha Press, the Cool World comic served as a prequel to the movie, fleshing out the backstory of Hollywood, Frank Harris, and the bizarre rules of the Doodle Dimension. Here's the kicker. The comic actually had more mature content, more coherent storytelling, and more authentic Bakshi-style weirdness than the film it was tied to. In fact, the comic shows Holly as far more sinister, almost demonic in nature, and dives into the actual fear of characters living in a surreal world with no control over their own fates. It even hints at a war between doodles and noids, humans, something that never made it into the movie at all. You'd think a movie with a confusing plot would want less backstory, but nope, DC gave us more info than the actual film did. Go figure. These issues are now collector's items for Bakshi and weird cinema fans, so if you ever find them in a dollar bin, grab them. They're way cooler than they had any right to be. Today, Cool World exists as a kind of cinematic ghost. It wasn't a hit. Critics hated it. Audiences were confused, and Ralph Bakshi, once a groundbreaking voice in animation, never directed another feature film again. But over time, Cool World has gained a cult following, precisely because of its flaws, its chaos, and its mystery. It's a case study in what happens when a director's vision is hijacked by studio fear, when creative control is sacrificed in the name of marketability, and when a film is stripped of its soul, but it still leaves behind the haunting echo of what it could have been. People keep watching Cool World not because it's a masterpiece, but because it almost was. You can feel the fragments of brilliance poking through the mess, the disturbing imagery, the broken characters, the sense that something much deeper, much more powerful was trapped inside the frame, screaming to get out. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in a locked vault, that scream is still echoing. So what do you think? Was Cool World just a weird failed experiment, or is it a buried masterpiece that Hollywood didn't want us to see? Have you spotted any strange animation details? Do you think the lost R-rated cut is real? Please let me know and drop your theories in the comments. I want to hear all your wildest ideas. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the madness of Cool World, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more disturbing, nostalgic, and behind-the-scenes stories from the cartoons and movies you thought you knew. Because this was just the beginning. See you next time.